We have a few items on the agenda today, and Hannah will kind of guide us through them, including discussion on performance measures with Dave Mitchell, some updates from Hansu, and then some work that we've done on the project list as well. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Hannah.
Oh, there we go. Had to find the correct button. All right, thanks, Jeanette, and welcome everyone. So yeah, we're going to start off with some additional discussion on the performance measures. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to David Mitchell, who is our senior transportation planner over here at PAG, and we'll build on the discussion from last time and we get some direction on the targets. But I know he has some updated data to share. So David, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thanks, Anna. Good morning, everybody. I'm on two platforms, on my phone and on my computer here. I'm gonna share my screen and bring up a copy of the most recent. It's kind of a draft performance report that we can step through. As where we left off last time is we were looking to, I say we, meaning staff, we are trying to, I'm having trouble sharing my screen here with some stuff, bear with me. But we have some proposed methodologies to just use the 2045 target setting practice to apply to the current data and forecast out to have the 2055 targets. There was a request to have more data made available to the group that was more recent, because what the last report that we published was for the 2045 RMAP update, and so that is a kind of the last published report. But I have some more data sets, and I'm trying to see if I can get that shared. It should pop up here now. So are you guys able to see
I can see it on my end.
Okay, great. Thanks for your patience on that. So where we're at now is I have all the most recent data uploaded into our databases, and I have all of the current values for all of our performance measures in a draft table for that. I would like to distribute that to you guys. It's for your review, but this is what we would be using for the basis of our analysis. I know it's a lot of data, so I'm gonna try and zoom in and pan over you can see there was a request to have more than just the last 5 years data. So I've gone back, we almost have a full decade worth of data for all measures. 2014 is when we started collecting for the original RMAP process. So I have all the data sets that's available for it in this table. And I also have certain target related material on the right hand side, for example, the 5-year average column. So that takes the most, I wouldn't say the recent years, but the 5 data sets that are most recent. So for example, pavement data set, we only have up to 2020. So that this 5-year average is basing it from 2016 through the 2020 data sets. There's a 2045 benchmark column. That's what we would be using in the upcoming tip cycle to kind of gauge whether or not we were on pace to make our 2045 target. So it's a value that falls on the same trend line for the 25-year horizon from our 2020 plan to the 2045 target date. So that's just the trend line value, and that's what we will be doing. Kind of a same type of approach for establishing a 2055 targets is to use a trend line analysis using this 5-year average data, applying that trend line to forecast out where we would intersect the 2045 target that was originally established, and then continue on out. So that would be ones that where we had a desired change of, decreasing by a rate or something like that. There are certain other measures that didn't apply to, for example, the average age of our transit fleet, where we would just, there's a good principle behind having a 7-year-old per vehicle in the fleet. So that we'll probably keep that exact same value. So we would, have the appropriate methodology applied using the 5-year average, the 2045 original target, and then the desired change that the community in our public participation process revealed on how severe and how much of a change and to what direction that we would have there. In the column, I've retained the original 2020 status changes. At the moment, we're almost at a midway point. So I wasn't able to do a full analysis like I did for 2020, mostly because we're missing, in some cases, 2022 data sets, some 23 data sets, and even 24 data sets to make that analysis possible. So I couldn't see much of it. Wasn't an appropriate way to tell whether those statuses have changed. However, there were a few standouts that deserve attention. One of which I would want to point out is our transit crash rate. That was something I noticed is up through 2018. We were kind of hovering around 2.5 accidents per 10,000 miles, and that had significantly changed dramatically since COVID shut down. You can see now we're well under about a half an accident per 10,000 service miles. So there's been some improvements there by our transit providers, or perhaps a change in reporting. But I did notice that there has been a severe change in the data there. Another one that came up would be, I'm sorry, I don't have that in front of me. Hannah, do you recall I sent you some slides? I don't know if by chance you can pull those up while I'm talking and we can switch over to those for a moment.
Sure. Yeah, let me find them and I'll get them right up.
One of them is total transit trips. I could say the trend is reversing. What I'm highlighting here is our last calendar year. So 2023 data is captured there. And that number is only going to increase because we have only through October data. The 5-year average is at 14.5. So you can see we're well above the 5-year average for the last 2 years. In addition, we are back right to where we were in 2018. I'm highlighting that number now. That's our 2018 figure. So we've more people are taking public transportation and at the levels that they were at 2018. So 2 years prior before the COVID shutdown. So there is a shift, possibly for several factors. The city has waived the fare. We are in a recession. The cost of gasoline has spiked. There's a lot of telework, so perhaps people are doing away with their personal automobiles and they're also incorporating transit. So there's a lot of theories out there supporting, but would like to point out that is one of the changes I've seen in there. And Hannah, but were you able to find the other two? So I want to make sure I get the right ones. There's over 50 measures.
Yeah, so I have the 3 slides that you sent. So if you want to stop sharing your screen, I can pull up the.
Sure. Yeah, it's always funner to look at the graph than the table. Thank you.
All right. Let me know if that's showing up okay.
Perfect. Thank you. And this is a better visual of it. This is a screenshot from our performance measures dashboard. You can see I've highlighted our 10-year low was when we did our 2045 RMAP. So things were looking pretty good for us as we prepared the RMAP, and then you could see things severely changed for the worse. This red dash line shows that that's the trend that we need to be to get back on pace with the RMAP 2045 target, and you can see we're stepping away from it. Since the 2020 report, we've had those 3 data points that are significantly higher. So this will for sure be a change from on pace to trending away if we were to go with this data as a formal report. So again, this is all draft information. The data has not been completely cleaned and reviewed by the all experts, but this is what the data that's being published is showing for pedestrian serious injury rates. And serious injury rates are also determined by work commutes, which is important to note. the pedestrian and bicycle rates that we calculate, those are based on work commute trips. And census data is estimating a significant drop in the number of work-related trips, and that's showing up in the data. And that's probably what's causing this increase. I don't think that in terms of vehicle miles traveled, we're seeing a bigger increase. Although we are, that's not to be mistaken, we are seeing an increase in roadway incidents with pedestrians, including fatalities. But as far as this measure, it's being influenced by the commute to work rate published by the American Community Survey, which is a census estimate. Okay, next one, Hannah, please. And this is the data that I was just talking about. We have a huge drop in 2022. That might be a modeling hiccup, but otherwise, these are all the walk, bike, or transit trips that they have, dropped in there. So we have surpassed the benchmark kind of earlier than necessary. But this right here is a mixed stat, and it's just worth to note, but not really take action. And I believe that is all of them. If the next one is transit trips, right, Hannah?
Yes.
Yeah. So we spoke on that, but here it is visually. The highlighted area that's above that trend line, that is where we would want the bar graphs to land if we were to be on pace. You can see we're catching up, but we're not quite there yet. So next steps is to provide that next level of analysis, that methodology to find the 2055 target using our basically our benchmarking methodology. And we would just need the clear direction to do so. It does take a little bit of time to incorporate all the graphs and data grabs, if you will. So if it's something that this group thinks is acceptable, our ask is to go ahead and prepare a list of 2055 targets for review by this group to continue on with the draft preparation. So with that, Hannah, I'll turn it back over to you for discussion, questions.
Dave, this is Hansu, and I have a quick question because of you mentioned about the model and regarding like just the market share of the transportation mode, but I'm not sure just in 2022, and the model doesn't provide any just the output, and that might be the reason. So instead of like saying,
you're right. I thank you, Hansu. And you know what? I explained that horribly. We don't have a 2022 data point for that set, so that's why the graph looks bad. The scale is also thrown off, but if you were to zoom in, you would see that we have already we're above where we expected to be, if you would. But we would not consider that to be a total win and check off the box, because we still have 3 years to go to get to that benchmark. We could see a drop. But I'm sorry for the misleading. And Hansu, thanks for chiming in. But that's the description of why the graph looked funny. And the detail was real minute in the scale of the graph. But the point was, we've already met the benchmark. We're still so we're on pace. We're better than on pace to meet our 2045 target.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Hansu. So yeah, I guess we can open it up now if there's any thoughts, questions. Or jurisdictional partners who are in attendance, feel free to jump right in, or you can raise your hand. Any feedback or questions on what David had presented?
And so I guess then if everyone's on board with the idea, I can share out this table that I spoke of. It has all the updated data. Then at least the data can be used as we work through the project selection. And as I get more information and updates to this report, we can provide them as they're made.
And it looks like Jonathan Crow from Pima County, you have your hand up, so go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Hannah. Just Hannah and Jeanette, I don't know, I might have missed this right at the beginning, but do we have an agenda for today's meeting? And I'm kind of wondering what our process is and what we're going to be doing today, just to give an overview before we get into the details here.
Sure, yeah. So there was an agenda that was sent out. It's also posted on the PAG website. I don't know if I can put in the chat, but yeah, essentially, we're just building on what we discussed at the last meeting. So Dave presented on the performance measures, so getting direction as far as setting those targets and moving forward with including those in the RMAP. We're also have a presentation from Amansu just about some current conditions for population and growth looking forward. And then we are going to be discussing more into the performance measures, or sorry, the project side of things. So still discussing that list, refining that, and we do have some recommendations to the project list from PAG staff. So we'll have that for discussion. Obviously, there's still some things up in the air with the RTA Next project list and including that into the RMAP. But we will be, basically building on previous conversations and just still working on refining that project list. Jeanette, I don't know if you had anything to add as well, but yeah, the agenda is posted on the PAG website. If you look back on the email from Dawn, it should be linked there as well.
Yeah, I got it. Thanks, Hannah.
Okay. Jeanette, did you have anything to add?
No, I don't. That covers it. I think the intent is kind of to continue the discussion that we started last time, and then continue to build our to-do list as we move forward. So thanks, Hannah.
All right. Dave, was there anything else on? Oh, sorry, Patrick. Looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So when you're talking about establishing targets, maybe I missed this, but what are you thinking about for that process? Are you looking to kind of reestablish the trend lines based on the last 3 years of data, or really looking at a continuation and kind of anchoring back to that previous process in 2016, recognizing that we're not meeting those and maybe realigning some of our planning goals or prioritization to achieve those targets, or lessening targets, I guess, because if we're anchoring to the most recent crash data, that's, as Dave pointed out, quite out of alignment with what we had been looking at in 2016. So I guess in that target discussion, are we looking at keeping the more aggressive targets potentially and anchoring up, or backing off to what we're currently seeing in data?
I can answer that. So we are not looking to do any new goals for this RMAP process. So the performance measures that we have in line and the targets we feel still support the goals and strategies laid out. That said, yeah, there'll be some performance measures, notably in safety, those in land use and transportation. Those are our job and housing accessibility to transit. That's more of an urban sprawl measure. Multimodal choices, there's some that we're behind pace because we're automobile centric. So the way it plays out is there was a significant change or some sort of level of desired change for a lot of the measures, and some of those we haven't even come close. In fact, we're moving in the wrong direction. So your question is, how are we addressing those? Some of them might be a little easier and straightforward, but those ones where the data is completely different story, how do we use that as an emphasis? All that can be taken into consideration later when we bring these to you for another review. But the way that it plays out is we would still want to keep the long-term 2045 target in those cases. Lower them or adjusting them kind of goes against what the original goals were set out in the perception of our communities. So we'd have to re-engage that process to make sure that we are reading that temperature correctly. Otherwise, we could, the data is telling us that the rate of change has to be steeper, or we have to see a more significant rate of change. In other words, we have to catch up to be on the original pace. And then we have to do additional work to get down or up, or we have to get to the change required for the 2055. So it won't be a flat line from 2045 to 2055. There'll be the same desired rate of change applied. So there'll be another 10-year horizon, and it will be influenced by current data. You had pointed out by using the last 3 years, it could be 3 to 5 years, depending on the data available and the relevant and accuracy of such data. For example, pavement data, to use the last 5 years of available is a lot different than using the last maybe 3 years of better. So some of that is reviewed on a case-by-case basis, but the table that I'm going to be sending out will let you know what data sets are being used, so that you can help provide some thoughtful questions and discussion as we develop this, to make sure that we are using a sound approach for selecting those long range targets. They can be adjusted, but what we want to do is to at least create a starting point, and using a methodology that's already in use for our forecasting techniques.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Just wanted to make sure we weren't talking about establishing targets based on the movements and trends. I think that's safety data. You kind of thinking of where we've gone from 100 to 1,000, we've gone over to 250 in the last couple of years. If I saw that graph, starting there and then you kind of so we can put more aggressive targets.
Patrick, sorry to interrupt. Your audio seems to be cutting out. I don't know if it's just me or other people can hear the same thing.
I'm having trouble too. I couldn't hear if you had a question or not, Patrick. He may have jumped off to come back on. We lost him.
Oh, it looks like he's getting a headset.
Multimodal. That's
All right. Well, Patrick, if you have anything else, feel free to jump in or raise your hand. Did anybody else in attendance have any thoughts on performance measures and targets? Oh, Natalie, your hand is up, so go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just curious about, is there additional data that we can work with to try to help us kind of assess why we haven't met these benchmarks? Are we just looking at the data, year to year, looking at the trends, and then through our project selection, trying to make some choices to turn those around? I mean, PAG does a lot of work where you're collecting additional data, doing things like your household travel survey and various things. I know there's a lot of plans coming up for that. When does that data come into play with our decision making on these projects so that we can try to reach our goals?
Sure. Thanks for the question. It's Natalie?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So this exercise is strictly for the performance measures, is not directly related to the project selection. You, as a member, can use this data and information through your own process, but as a PAG process, it's not used formally for the project selection. You will see some of the data for these measures. That's the same data sets that are used for the measures, and they'll be published in the performance measures report of that Project Explorer. So the tools available where in the area where you go in and add your projects and whatnot. There's a section to generate a report, and it'll give you the current values for that project area in certain performance measures categories. Not all of it, only certain data sets: pavement, bridges, crashes, sidewalk, freight corridor, environmental sensitivity. There's, depending on which report you're looking at, there's upwards of a dozen. There's a smaller one that only has a handful, but those data sets either come through PAG exercises where we've already got agreements with partner agencies, or get from ADOT. They are outputs of our transportation model, our air quality models. They're either federally provided to us, or they're purchased from PAG, or they're offered free from other public entities, for example, the Centran reports. And all that information is included at the bottom of this table that I'm sending out for your review.
Okay, so is there no evaluative process to determine kind of what was selected last time, and then making some associations between the choices that were made in the past and what we're seeing today? and kind of different choices that we can make in order to try to turn it around? Because I'm not really understanding where we can actually address some of these issues such as safety or like CO2 emissions. The safety numbers were really unfortunate that you showed there. So I guess I'm just not understanding where we as a committee can decide on kind of that evaluative process of what we chose and how it resulted in certain outcomes, and then what we might need to change in order to have different outcomes. Just not understanding if there's a process like that at all in this.
Let me understand what I think you're saying is you want to be able to put in a project and see how it moves the needle on the performance measures. Is that kind of a taste of it?
Well, I wouldn't think that any one project is going to move the needle on.
Right, and okay, good, because that's basically so this process does nothing for the project selection or project building. In a sense, it's just a regional report card on how we're doing on right. We're at the moment 57, well 38 with target, but over 57 measures that we track for the region, and this is a report card on the 38 that we have long range targets for, and that's essentially it. As a region, or as a in our long range plan, we don't have a policy called out to use performance measures as the practice. It is mentioned in the strategies through our TIP development, which is where we take projects from the long range plan or from other project lists that our members have and bring them to the table to have funding brought to them. That's our funding document. That one incorporates performance measures that can be used through that process, and it's through the evaluation of what projects are you putting into that cycle. You can do a evaluation of a single project, or it can do a package of projects. So you can look at all, if you have 20 projects going into the TIP, you can evaluate how those how those fare up in terms of current conditions. So the way performance measures work is they're using data that is in the past. So it's not forecasting. So it's not a way where if you were to build a project, you're going to see what are the implied changes. Unfortunately, it doesn't and can't work that way. An example of that is with crashes at an intersection. So you have a four-way stop sign, you put in a traffic light, it completely changes the dynamic of the intersection. And so we go in there and review with the PAG's risk safety assessment, RSAs. We say, okay, if we put in these installs and look at the pedestrian and bike activity, look how the cars are moving at all times of day, we can put in measures that we will have the most influence on the intersection based on the type of road, based on the vehicle miles traveled. So, and then we can install the safety improvements that we think will best benefit that intersection. And there's an expected, what we call a crash modification factor for that, if you will. So there's an expected rate of return or a change in crashes, but it's more of a gauge. And that's the best that's even out there, but there's no way that we can do that for a list of projects on a regional scope. And that's what these performance measures packages are. The data that we have that's used to report out on this report card is also available to you guys and all of our members through our Project Explorer program. So it's there, it's for your disposal, but what the process that you're describing is not currently how it's done. We give it to you, we allow you to use it, and internally you have the resources to do it and bring that back for discussion. That's always an option. But at the moment, performance measures data just strictly informs the project selection process.
Okay. I don't want to take up too much time, but it does seem to me that there is a missing piece here, that we're seeing kind of data about what's happening, but we're not being given any additional information about about what might be causing it or the types of things that we can do to correct it. So I think that that's a piece that could be helpful in order for us to try to actually get to a point where we are meeting our performance measures.
Natalie, I couldn't agree with you more. And my hope is that once you see these draft targets and you look at it and you know something that we don't, that's where the discussion happens. if we say, hey, my constituents are my public open houses, they're telling me that this is not enough. We got to do more. You know, that's when we have that talk. But at the moment, we're not getting that. We're getting everything at a high level of wanting to dive in and change everything. But unfortunately, I think we'll wind up coming back up to the surface a lot at the same boat dock. It's going to be much the same look and feel. There'll be some tweaks because we'll see that just by moving a performance measure is not necessarily going to make things happen. I'm sorry, moving a target to a different level does not make necessarily mean that things will more aggressively happen that way, unless that is the way that we evaluate our project selection and prioritization. And that's currently not how we operate.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Were there any other thoughts from anyone? Questions, comments? All right. Oh, Patrick, sorry, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, sorry for not being audible previously. Just wanted to finish
We can
my
hear
thought.
you now.
Great. I just wanted to emphasize that I don't think it would be appropriate if we're talking about setting those targets, and it sounds like you're going to be sending those out, but to be anchoring them as a baseline at that 150 fatalities per year, which was what, a 50-60% increase from 5 or 6 years ago. So keeping in mind kind of that longer term trend and not just establishing a less kind of aggressive target and outcome that we're striving towards in our transportation investments only because of the recent trend lines are working against it. As a second thought, just on what Dave was saying, it does seem like there are some tools available that the RMAP does provide in terms of the project by project evaluation, and those can certainly be weighted based on some of the underlying performance of those roadways. It's not going to be touching the entire system, but if we want to prioritize safety, I think there is a mechanism of doing that. And even some of the work that ADOT's doing from their planning to programming could be a model. But even here, you guys have the performance values, the performance of each of those individual corridors, and increasing the weight of that in safety versus some of the other metrics in which we are performing well at would be one way, at least taking it on at a long range planning scale.
That's right. Thanks, Patrick. Yeah, currently the metrics used in those performance reports, they're all weighted equally. So if you wanted to zero in on one or two, you could, I believe you could change it right now. Peter, if you're online, do you know if that feature is live at the moment?
Sorry, which feature?
The ability to change the weight of a performance scoring category and the performance measures reporting. It's in the RMAP Project Explorer tools.
No, it's not. Those are all static, and we update those as we go through each cycle.
So that's something that we would have to update and turn on for them to use. But if that's where they wanted to go, that would be our approach.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Any other comments or questions from anyone? No, I'm not seeing any hands up. So, Dave, the next step on our end then would be to draft those 2055 targets and bring it back for review from the group.
Correct. Yeah, there'll be individual. Every performance measure with a target will have its own page, a report card. It'll have the graph, the data tables, the source information, the methodology for calculating, and any other important information about the document. If there are special considerations for the target setting, those will also be noted. So it'll be close to a 45 page report that we'll be able to thumb through.
Great, thank you. All right, before moving on, just want to give anyone one last chance if there's any other thoughts or questions. I'm on the performance measure targets discussion. No? All right, well then we can move on to the project, more of the project level discussion for the RMAP. So I'm Hansu, if you're ready, I can turn it over to you if you want, and I have your slides if you'd like me to pull them up, but if you want to go ahead and provide your
I
your
can take care of that.
presentation.
Yeah.
Oh.
I can share my screen. I try it. Let me first share presentation mode. Okay. Go back and close and reshare again. Case, I think this is the one. I'm not sure just you guys actually just see my in the presentation.
Yes, yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you so much. And good afternoon. And the RMAP, the working group members, and I actually brought in some just important and input files and for our just the modeling effort in the land use model and the activity-based model, and including just the moves model. So which is actually just the first and the stepstone and the population estimate and the projection. So I hope to just discuss further and the data and the outputs and the outcomes and the analysis and through this and the RMAP working group. Moving forward. Okay. So, and if you may or may not know about exactly just what the population and how just the population estimated and projected and for the forecast years. And we actually just here is a rough idea and how we can kind of get the data or just develop the data. And for population estimates and annually estimated by AOEO, Arizona Office of Economic Opportunity, for county level and the sub-county level, and as a co-member PAC. And we have just a subcommittee, PopTech, and the PopTech subcommittee reviews the annual product and the population estimates in just the county level and the sub-county level. And plus, just the state agency is required to use the AOEO estimate and the population estimate. And for population projections in the AOA2 release, population projections 3 times between 2 decennial censuses, second, fifth, and eighth year of a decade, and publishes sub-county projections 9 months after county projections were published. The population estimates are usually published around just the mid-December, and the population projections any year to second, fifth, eighth year. And that year, like just the end of December, then just the 9 months after then, and you usually see they're kind of just publish it and just have kind of population projections end of the September, the following year. The PAC and also developed in several times in the sub-county population projections because the AOE allows and us to develop it in the sub-county level based on the county population projections and aligned, and also just required for any state agencies to use the this population projections. Here's the quick and the snapshot and the population estimate and the 2023 population estimates, and assuming July 1st, 2023. For county estimates, and use the modified composite method and the housing union method. If you want to know about those details, and you can just check or just check PopTech, the subcommittee meeting materials, or just the YouTube videos, or just let me know. I can share the information. So here's the rough just the 2023 population estimates in here, 1,080,300. That's the July 1st, 2023 population estimates, and which is actually just using and more detailed data, and especially for sub-county level, and the estimates and using the housing unit method and based on Census 2020 statistics, and as well as the jurisdictional building permit report. So on the right hand side and the upper table, you will see those and reported and completion and the demolition of the housing unit, and net changes from April 20, which is the census 2020, and to just up to date and first and second quarter of the 2023. So total we have and 14,266 in the housing units built and net changes actually from just the last 2020 census conducted. The jurisdictional and the population and the share, you see that, and as you expected, in the Tucson, 52%, and Pima County, 35%, and followed by Marana, Oro Valley, and Sahuarita, 5.5%, 4.5%, 3.4%. And the South Tucson is was relatively kind of a small number, as you see, 0.4%. So for and the population projections, I brought here in the historical births and deaths and presented at the PopTech meeting. And so as you see, and this data is from like 1950, and all those births and deaths, and they're shown here. The birth is in blue line, and death is in the orange line, and all those bar charts actually for natural growth. So during the COVID-19 period, and so you see it's the first time ever, and reported actually just a negative in the natural growth. So death is actually just the more than and the birth is, and that was the first year, and is it 2020, and then you see our latest kind of a 2022, and it was a little different, and the birth is actually just tilting up, and instead like a death is actually just slowing down. So there was a kind of one of the critical portions, just forecast year is affected by just small changes because of it's actually just the changes and those in the trend line, and as well as just COVID-19 just drops in just natural growth. So next. And another just important data is actually migration trend. And after recession, then the migration has increased, and observed the high migration number in 2021 and 2022. There's a COVID-19 and pandemic period because of I think you heard some or you saw some article about those and the big migration and from just California to Arizona. So there was a time, and so that's one of those impact and to our just the long-term in the migration trend. So assume that the recent high increase and will continue in future, but the fact and significantly. Based on those and the historical patterns, actually just the county population projection and the estimated here, and from 2022 through 2060. And here you can see that the orange color line is the 2022 population projection in the county level, and then just the blue dot actually showing the last time and the 8th year in the 2018 population projections. So it's more likely just the same, and even with those and up and down during just the COVID-19 period, and forecast the 1.3 million population in 2060, and which is an annual around the 6,000 population increase with a 0.52% annual growth. And here is for Stable County population projections. I brought some kind of just a quick snapshot of historical trends. And since in the 2010, and annually is just an increase of 0.78%. And the population and strong annual growth rate, and as expected in the town of Marana, and followed by Sahuarita. And Tucson and Pima County shows a major population share of growth for 2010-2022 period. So I also brought on the right hand of the table and the share of just the total growth in the 1980 through 2022 to compare just the recent and the trend in the 2010 through just the 2022. The share of the total growth, actually you can just compare those two, and the strong in the town of Marana as expected, and followed by Sahuarita and Oro Valley. Then just Tucson and Pima County, and the share of the total growth is roughly 30% compared to the last and longer period, even through just the 1980 through just the 22, is showing that 40% City of Tucson and Pima County is 35%. So here's a sub-county population projection and the summary and assumptions we applied in the 2022 jurisdictional boundary based on that, and no annexation, and allowed for any forecast year, and max growth capacity applied, and especially for the town of Oro Valley because of some issues and about the capacity limitation. So that's applied, and also just a no negative increase applied, and especially for in the South Tucson, because of the recent trend in the South Tucson losing lots of just the population. So we don't see, and that will continue and for the forecast year long-term period. So we assume that, and especially for no negative increase applied for South Tucson. Applied just the methodology, we brought in the several just the time series model, and with just the finalized and optimal the time series model, and plus just applied in 2019 county share method. Because of the population projection, county level 1.22 billion population in 2045, and 2055 1.2728 and million population, which is similar to just the last 2018 period. So we suggested those two, and the time series model, time series method, and the 2019 county share method. So here's the summary. As you see in the first, and the annual growth, and for town of Marana, and showing that just around the 1600 annual growth. This is not just the compound and growth. This is just the average growth and the annually divided by. And 183 in the Oro Valley because of the capacity issue, and the Sahuarita is 552 and 52, and the population increase annually. So City of Tucson 2000, and Pima County, balance of Pima County 1800, the population growth annually. And just the annual growth, you see that the same as here in the Marana is actually just the highest in the 2.76%, and followed by in the Sahuarita 1.53%, and then followed by in the Pima County 0.48%, and the City of Tucson 0.37%, and the same as the Oro Valley. And then just the total growth, actually, I'm sorry, just percent of the total growth. We see in the first in the City of Tucson, 33%, and then Pima County, 29%, followed by Marana, and then 26%, and Sahuarita, 9%, then Oro Valley, around 3%. So, and those are the in the summary, and all just the relevant the references you can find out in the population estimates and the numbers, or including all other just the counties and the sub-county level in Arizona. Through that, just the first two links and the estimates and the projections. And for PopTech meeting materials presentations, and you can also find out 2023 population estimates and the 2022 2060 population projections through the links. And plus, just if you are interested in, and especially for sub-county population projection methodology, you can find that information through the bottom link. And plus, just for overall the RMAP timeline, and I think just this is another just important and the portion. So the almost done, but hope to just finalize in the 2024 Q1, and the finalize and the list of just the RMAP projects, and the finalize RMAP land use model inputs. So we've been updating, and we have a plan just discussing further for those, and the collectors just the inputs and the review, and together, and 2024 Q2 through Q3, and we'd like to just model and all those, and discuss the RMAP scenarios. And sure, just there are some discussions here, the RMAP, the working group, and we'd like to just incorporate those together, and with our just the PAC land use model, LUM, and the new activity-based model developed, and the air quality model just moves forward. And hopefully just a 2024 Q4, and we'd like to kind of just share some of the outputs in the draft version, and the population and employment allocation, which is mainly for just the PopTech, but plus there will be additional the performance measure updates for the RMAP working group. I think those are all I have. Do you have any questions about the population and projection and estimate, or just any questions for timeline?
Hansu, I just wanted to add a few things.
Mhm.
Well, thank you for joining us today, and I wanted to have Hansu come and talk about some of these, this information to this group specifically, because it's a lot of work has gone in through the PopTech group, and I know some of those members on PopTech are here, but most of you are not. So a lot of this information, or all of it, goes into the land use model and the ABM. And those are critical components of the RMAP. So we wanted to make sure that this committee understood some of the data that was going into that modeling, because Hansu will be back in front of us a few times before the end of the process. So this is sort of the beginning steps of building those models. So Hansu, did you have any other thoughts or comments about that?
No, I think yeah, we can discuss the anything just that you want to bring here, and based on maybe the performance measures and for project selection, or just evaluation of the how just the performance actually just improved, and compare those two based on your forecast year through the RMAP and the process. So, or if you are interested in how the model and they're working, and then we can also bring here as well.
Yeah, that would be great. I would like it to bring it to this group for more detailed discussion. And then of course we'll have updates at TPC as well. But I think for this group, just some of the looking under the hood at some of the inner workings of what we're doing would be beneficial. So does anybody have any questions or comments for Hansu? All right, thanks, Hansu.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
All right, yeah, thank you so much, Hansu and Jeanette. So I think the next thing that we can move on to, so as PAG staff, we've been going through the project list. I want to thank everyone. I've reached out to a number of you individually just to go through the project list and notice things that we have questions on, or potential overlaps or duplicates. So I want to thank you all for your help and patience with that as we just continue to on our own as PAG staff go through that project list and try to refine and clean some of it up. But I think, let me share my screen. I think what I'll go into now. Let's see. All right. Can everyone see that? It's a spreadsheet.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Jeanette. So yeah, so again, as PAG staff, we've been working with the project list and going through everything. I wanted to share some recommendations just on some specific projects. Maybe we can start there before moving on to the more of a discussion about the entire list that was sent out earlier today. But these are lists. There's not too many here. I think maybe about 16 that we were going through. So these are projects that might not be a current project and would be a candidate for removal from the list, or ideas we had about combining projects, changing names or titles of projects. Oh, Jason, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have another meeting at 2 o'clock, so I'm gonna be logging off. So sorry. I just have a couple of projects on the list. Kayatorium is under construction right now, so you can probably, I don't know if you want to remove that. And then the Camino de Oeste, the estimate that Rick Ellis put together was around 23.56 mil. So if you update that, same scope of work.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Jason. Appreciate it.
Okay, bye.
All right. There. So yeah, so going back to this spreadsheet. So these are multiple sponsor projects and PAG projects, and a couple from individual jurisdictions. But I think what I'll do is I'll just go through the whole list, go through each one quickly, and then we can go back to the top and have discussions about each one. So, and Jeanette, of course, feel free to jump in with any of these if I'm missing something or more information is needed. So the first one is 83.14 for the RMAP ID. This is the Stay Safe Routes to School program. So this was one we had talked about as a candidate to remove from the list, as it is no longer a current program. So the cost estimate for that over, these are all taken currently from the RMAP Explorer, was 20 million. 230.98, that's the next one on the list. That was the air monitoring and data collection region-wide. So this was brought up at the last meeting as a project that could be removed from the list, as the funding is independent of transportation-related funding. The next project is 557.08. These are non-regional roadways throughout the region, jurisdictional discretion for local roads. This was, and again, this is a multiple sponsor project. Let me go back up so you can see the top as long as possible. Currently in plan. So this was one to possibly remove from the list because the focus on these were for local roads and not regional roadways. The next one, 16.03, right-of-way preservation, region-wide purchase to preserve basically right-of-way from development. This was multiple sponsor in plan, 50 million. This was one that was not a current program, so candidate for potential removal. The next one was 633.08. So this is environmental mitigation strategies region-wide for transportation projects. This was a multiple sponsor currently in plan. Our thought was to combine this project with the RTA sponsored project 3.06 for wildlife linkages region-wide, and to revise the title to wildlife linkages and environmental mitigation strategies region-wide to protect wildlife and natural resources, and also keep that as a multiple sponsor project. So just an opportunity to consolidate. We would have to update the funding for that project. The next one was 659.03, transportation studies region-wide to improve the transportation network. The cost of this was $30 million. It's a multiple sponsor in plan project. So our thought here was to remove this from the list. It has some legacy studies and descriptions that aren't necessarily current. So creating a new RMAP ID number for transportation plans and studies region-wide, and we would need to update the cost accordingly. The next project is 65.00. So this is alternative modes program region-wide for education and outreach to promote alternative modes. This is a PAG sponsored in-plan project. Our thought here was to combine this with project 136.98. Wondering, let me see if I can zoom in just a little. Oh, maybe that's too much. Hopefully it's easy enough for everyone to read, but combine this with project 136.98, which was the travel demand management region-wide, which includes rideshare, TRP, van pool, and congestion management. So basically, consolidate these two projects, create a new RMAP ID with the potential title of Alternative Modes Program region-wide, and we would update the description accordingly. 299.03, this is the air quality model and inventory upgrades region-wide. Develop new air quality model with emissions inventory. So PAG sponsored and planned project. So we discussed this. We believe it's for ozone conformity, kind of a placeholder for if the region ever was not in conformance. We are proposing this program or this project to be removed because we do expect the PAG region to stay in conformity for ozone. Moving down the list, 349.03. This is the safety programming and funding process, a region-wide safety program. So this is a PAG sponsored project. The change here, the cost, so we updated the cost, the planning level cost estimate was updated from 6 million to 15.5 million. So it was a big jump. So this is an updated cost here. And this cost estimate is based on PAG admin cost. It assumes a 30-year average annual inflation rate of 2.4%, and no changes to the current program. Let's see, Patrick, I see.
Yeah. Oh, I was just going to say, it looks like Patrick had his hand up.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know if you wanted to take comment. Yeah, no, appreciate it. I'll have other comments, but just this one jumped out at me. I noticed that this was the only one accounting for inflation, but the other project estimates are all in current year dollar. So is that inconsistent with the way we are kind of using a base year for all the other items? Because I think the assumption was inflation is tracking with revenue inflation for the project costs.
Right. Jeanette might, yeah.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that. Patrick is a good point. We just got this number from Gabe today, so we dropped it in here. But what we're trying to do is make sure it matches what the current cost of the program, what it currently costs for him to run that program. So, but yeah, we'll get back to him and make sure that we have that correct. But thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Jeanette. Thanks, Patrick. Sorry, I'm kind of rattling through these pretty quick, but okay, so 355.03, that is the commuter incentives for alternative transportation and region-wide incentives aimed at changing the behavior of drive-alone commuters. So this is a PAG program and plan. We are proposing this to be removed as its cash incentives are not a current program. Same goes with, think about the next four, 367.98, the LTAP region-wide ongoing training for regional jurisdictions. Then the next four all PAG PAG sponsored projects. So the LTAP program, we are proposing that to be removed if it's not a current program, something that we do. 370.98 was the regional travel information system, region-wide programs to obtain disseminate travel information. Again, not a current program, so we're proposing that be taken out of the project list. The next two are commuter rail studies. So the first is for Vail downtown to Vail study feasibility and implementation of commuter rail. This has been on the reserve list. So we're proposing to both remove that project from the list, and again, the 568.08 is the next one here on the second page, and that's Green Valley downtown. The feasibility and implementation of commuter rail. So both of these are on the reserve list, so they won't they wouldn't impact the fiscal constraint of they wouldn't count towards the fiscal constraint of the plan, but those are reserved. But we are proposing to remove those from the list. The next three have to do with pavement preservation and reconstruction. So the first one, this is a new project, 8.23, submitted by Pima County. And the one below is a City of Tucson project, so pavement preservation on regional roadways. So our thought for basically the pavement preservation side of things, so for these two projects was to actually move those over into the current in-plan project of 232.08, which is, I'll try and highlight it, this one right here. So this is a multiple sponsor project. So this is pavement preservation and reconstruction region-wide of pavement. So basically putting that funding into like a single and a bucket and categorical for all of the PAG region. We did take a look back at our the financial plan. The current cost of the 232.08. So that's pavement preservation and reconstruction. Again, that's a multiple sponsor project. The current, how it's currently in the RMAP Project Explorer, it's about $2.2 billion. So we look back at the financial plan, the cost estimate that we received based on what jurisdictions told us for their contributions is 1.3 billion. So we are also proposing to revise this number to the 1.3 billion to match that financial plan. And I know there's going to be discussion about that. Jeanette, I don't know if there's anything you had to add specifically, or that you wanted to add specifically to those three.
The pavement projects.
Yes.
Yeah. So going back to the conversations that we had late 2022 and early last year with Dave Zinda as we developed the finance plan, pavement was kind of addressed differently when he did the local fund contribution. So pavement's going to be a little bit different. It's not going to be calculated or subtracted out of that fiscal constraint bottom line number, because it wasn't included when we built that number. It was kind of separate to it. So we have this, we have these numbers, and they will be reflected. Pavement will be reflected in the RMAP, but kind of separate to the project list, if that makes sense. But I'm happy to take any questions on that. But essentially, we don't want the RMAP to not address the significant contributions to pavement that the jurisdictions are making. That would be kind of, I think that's part of the whole picture of what we're doing. But when we calculate it into the finance plan, it's kind of looked at differently in terms of where the money is coming from.
All right, thank you, Jeanette. Just moving on to our last one, 541.08. This alternative energy and fuel vehicle infrastructure, region-wide, improve alternative energy and fuel infrastructure. So this is another PAG-sponsored in-plan project. We are proposing to remove this from the list as well, because it is not a current program and something that we do. So that kind of, and I rattled through those all pretty quick, but those were just, going through the list, just some thoughts we had and some recommendations. So yes, maybe we can just open it up for questions. I can go back, starting from the top or the bottom and go one by one, but I see Natalie, you have your hand up, so go ahead.
Yeah, I have a couple of comments, starting with the top, the Safe Routes to School program. That is a program that is really, I think, critical to actually have. And since I've been in this position, it hasn't been, as far as I know, it used to be a very robust program. My understanding is that it went away because it needed to help with some RTA financing. I want to know why it's not a program and how it can become a program again, because I think it's really, really important that we, as the regional transportation planners, be looking at schools and ensuring that students can get to schools safely, either by walking or biking. And I think that takes a concerted effort through a program like this. I did receive an email last week from an outside entity that showed the unspent Safe Routes to School funds in all over the country. And it showed Arizona as having one of the highest unspent pockets of money. So I guess I'm just curious, what will it take to have a program? And because I think it's a really high priority, and I definitely don't think it should be removed. So that's the first one. Maybe you can answer that.
Yeah, thanks for, yeah, go ahead, Jeanette.
Oh, thanks, Anna. No, it's a very good question. Honestly, Natalie, I don't know what happened to that program. There's others on this call that might be more familiar with what the history of that program is, but in the 5 years I've been associated with PAG, it hasn't really been around. It would take some desire from our sort of our management committee level and our regional council level to revive that program, someone sponsor it and be able to staff it and do the work it would take to get that project going. So it would, just take some momentum and some manpower. But I can't speak to what happened to it.
Okay. So as far as I know, the management committee and regional council aren't looking at project by project kind of thing. So I guess I'm just curious, what would it take for us as a group of folks who's tasked with doing these kinds of things to get that up there and to try to start that conversation? Because, I mean, they're not going to bring up safe routes to school management committee on their own. So what would be the process for us to be able to make a recommendation so that we can ensure that this program does exist again?
That's a very good question. I mean, that's one we can, of course, ask our leadership, but I think it would take the driving force behind it would be a sponsor of the program, right? So if one of the jurisdictions or an entity within the region stepped up and said, we want to take on that program and manage it and access that money and do some projects related to that, then we could certainly, that would be the point at which we would have that discussion. It looks like Jonathan and David have their hands up. They might have more to add.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to add, frankly. But I think my concern is, my question is, if this is not part of the RMAP, then, will that preclude any agency from initiating a Safe Routes to School project anytime in the future for the reason that it's not in a quote approved regional plan? So I don't think the question is so much why can't PAG or RTA start up a program again and staff it and fund it and all that. I think it's all about project eligibility, and that's the whole one of the reasons why we do an RMAP is we need to have projects in the RMAP that we can then circle back to when funding becomes available. So I'd be concerned about deleting this project for that reason, not being able to do a Safe Routes project at a jurisdictional level in the future.
Well, that's a good point, Jonathan. And I think that most of the projects that would fall under a Safe Routes to School project would probably fall under a different project number in terms of RMAP eligibility. So if we're looking at bike ped and safety infrastructure, like those, it could fall under a different RMAP ID number and not necessarily have to be called out as RMAP.
I guess I'm just curious about the funding, because my understanding is that there's federal dollars specifically dedicated to Safe Routes to School programs. Am I incorrect about that?
I'd have to look into that, to be
Okay.
honest.
It would be great if you could look into it, actually, Jeanette, because I really think this is an important topic. We got a lot of kids out there who want to be walking and biking to school, and their parents say it's just not safe enough. And so I think it's really incumbent upon us to make sure that we are looking at that, looking at school properties, looking at nearby neighborhoods, and as the planners, transportation in our region, making concerted efforts to ensure that kids can get to school outside of a car.
Yeah, I don't think any of
the federal dollars that are allocated to our state for this.
No, I don't think any of us disagree with you, Natalie. We just got to get a little history behind it. Mark has his hand up, and I have a suspicion he knows a lot about this.
Well, just from the statewide ADOT, administers the Transportation Alternatives program for Greater Arizona, those regions outside of MAG and PAG, and Safe Routes to School projects are included under the Transportation Alternatives program and funding. So, and PAG also gets a regional distribution to administer themselves under the Transportation Alternatives program. So if there were Safe Routes to School type projects, I would think they would be eligible under that. I believe it's referred to as the RTAG program under PAG.
Yes, that's what we call it.
Yep.
All right, Dave Mitchell, you had your hand up. Did you?
Yeah, I could shed some light. The RTA directive to channel funding to RTA projects was partly to do with this, but we did keep the staff member on board for quite some time. There was a slow sunset to the program. COVID effectively wiped it out. There was no interest from the schools. There was low participation for the types of activities that PAG was coordinating. And then current leadership did not look to pursue other funding sources to continue that program. At the time, that was using just general transportation planning funding for that person's salary. My question that I had, and Jonathan was good to go first, is if the need does come about, that if a funding description or a description in the RMAP is needed, we can always go through an amendment process if what we don't currently have is in there. Is that correct, Jeanette? But at the moment, no one's
It is,
currently
but I
using that.
don't foresee any projects that would come up out of in this realm, like a Safe Routes to School project, not being able to be covered in a different line item in the RMAP. Those projects could fall into other line items. So I don't think we would have to do an actual RMAP amendment to do a program like that.
And that's my thought too. I guess the point I was making is PAG was always on board and at the ready. If there's ever a need to do an amendment, we can do so. Obviously, we don't prefer to have that go out, but if there's ever if the needs change from what, because the trouble is we're trying to plan out a long range plan, so our needs are definitely going to change between now and 2055, the horizon year. So when those needs do come up, whether it become different funding mechanisms, those can be addressed through amendments, not only in the RMAP, but also in the TIP when we go through that.
I just want to be clear about my request is that I would like to see a Safe Routes to School program implemented. I would like it to be, as it used to be, a Safe Routes to School, a program that's designed to look at safe routes to schools specifically. That's what I would like to see.
All right, Jonathan, you had your hand up? Sorry if I'm skipping around people. I'm just trying to take people.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Just real quick. So I think my concern again is that if we don't have a parent project in the RMAP, it could be difficult to get something funded. I mean, I recently just had a project determined to be not eligible for RTAG funding based on, some relatively minor criteria that were established internally that made the project ineligible. And I don't want that to happen again in the future for something like this. So I do think a lot of the improvements for a Safe Routes to School program are infrastructure specific, like sidewalks and curb cuts and potentially bicycle facilities. But there's a lot of other programmatic and other soft project elements that don't fall within infrastructure, that require staff time and are not engineering related, that are part of a Safe Routes project. And so there's not going to be a direct comparison or overlap between the transportation alternatives program and a Safe Routes to School program. And to me, it seems very easy and painless just to include it as a line item, as it's been, in the event that a jurisdiction does want to implement a project and doesn't have to worry about going through an amendment process, which is rather cumbersome and takes time when grant funds might be available on a shorter term basis. So I would recommend that we keep it in for that reason.
Okay. Patrick.
Yeah, thanks. I would echo my colleagues. I would not want to see this one removed. I do want to ask a clarifying question. So the project description is for the infrastructure specifically. Is there a separate line item that is for the programmatic element, or is that all wrapped up into this item that is being proposed for removal? Because the city of Tucson is currently funding out of the general fund, Safe Routes to School program has taken that up with PEG stepping back from the program. And we would not want to see the programmatic piece removed from the RMAP because, as has been stated, my understanding of the purpose of the RMAP is really to make projects eligible for future federal funding. So we have to show that consistency with our long range plan. So in the event that those dollars do open up and we can defray some of those costs that we're currently expending through the our general fund, or make that a regional program, that's something we would like to pursue.
Okay, yeah, it looks like Hannah just had the Project Explorer up and it doesn't have a description. So that's
but
not.
We can add one.
We can add one.
Yeah.
So
Thinking
Yes.
about-
Yeah, expanding that to keep it as maybe both the program and the associated infrastructure improvements.
perfect.
Just kind of a general comment too. I think we should maybe take a look at kind of the concept because it's not a current program. I wouldn't recommend removing it necessarily from a planning document. I think a planning document is intended to be kind of that statement of intent, the things we would like to be programs in the 20 to 30-year horizon of this document. So just because we're not currently doing something, I don't think is a justification for never doing something.
No,
So,
that's a good point. And I think too, like some of this is not necessarily just getting rid of something because we don't do it, but also looking at how we can change it to more accurately reflect what we are doing. So it's good to hear about your program specifically, because if that's how if you guys are doing the programs and you anticipate them evolving over the next so many years, we do want to make sure that that's reflected. So, and I guess that's a blanket statement too for any of not just these projects that we're talking about today, but for any of your projects, if they have changed significantly or you anticipate the direction of the project changing over the next 4 to 5 years, please do let us know because we can add those detailed descriptions. We have mentioned a few of those in here where we're looking at the project names and we're renaming them so that they are more inclusive or they reflect more of what we're doing. So honestly, any proposals that you guys have for additions or rewording things, do let us know for sure.
yeah, thank you for that, Jen. And I just think maybe, yeah, realigning these and maybe these are no longer programs that we want to pursue, but maybe because they're kind of temporary on hold due to funding constraints doesn't mean that we should look to remove them outright. And if there are federal programs that align with these in the future, having an RMAP ID associated with them without having to go through an amendment process is extremely valuable.
Yeah, fair enough. I agree. Mark, it looks like you have your hand up.
I'm sorry, I probably didn't take it down.
No, that's okay. We'll take
There we
any opportunity to hear from you. So we'll just keep calling on you when we need some wisdom. Patrick, you still have your hand up, so I'm guessing you didn't lower it.
Yeah, I did lower, but I guess we'll finish that. Say that the City of Tucson program used to be funded regionally, so it was passed through to the city to provide those services or to contract out with those services. And we certainly would have an interest in tapping into some of the future RTAG funds to be able to continue that, knowing that they're not currently available, but having them reflected here could be supportive of that.
Okay. Great. I see Natalie, you have your hand up? Or yeah.
I was just gonna move on. Yeah, so thank you for humoring me on that particular topic. It is very important, and I would be interested in hearing back from PAG on how you might consider rebuilding the Safe Routes to School program so that we can ensure that that is a priority when we're thinking about transportation plans in our region. Moving on to the next, that is the comment that I made last time, the air monitoring and data collection region-wide expand air quality monitoring. I would agree that that should be removed from the list. That we do, PDEQ gets a grant specifically for this from the EPA that has nothing to do with transportation funding. So I don't think that project needs to be listed in here.
All right, thank you for that comment. We can go one by one if you guys want, or if you just want to take a look and if anybody has any comments over the recommendations that Hannah made, I want to spare you all from us going each one, but if any of them stick out as if you have questions. Jonathan, it looks like you have a question perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, I think a number of these I have concerns about deleting, and I think one of the reasons that I mentioned earlier is by removing a project that potentially removes our ability to fund it later on if funding becomes available. So, for example, the third project on the list, the non-regional roadways, if that's a funding category or a project that, allows us to tap into future federal funds to do local roads, that seems like it's worth keeping in the plan if that eventuality happens, rather than eliminating that now and potentially putting local projects at risk of not being able to be funded because they're not captured in the regional plan. So I think that's going to hold true with my comments on a number of these projects, and I don't necessarily want to go through all of them right now at this committee meeting, but that's my overall concern about removing a number of these projects. And I'd have to go by, one by one offline and could give you some specific comments if you want, but that's an overall comment.
Yeah, absolutely, Jonathan. And yeah, I think Hannah just sent this out today. And so that's
this
exactly,
one. Oh,
this one went out earlier.
Sorry. So this one did not go out, but I can send it right now via email.
Yeah, that would be great. And
That would-
Jonathan, that's
yes.
exactly the ask that we have, is to kind of take a look at these and provide your expertise for sure. Mark, looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, just a question about the, I think there was one on there for LTAP. And is that the same one for the training that's available for the local jurisdictions for, for like flagging? There's a lot of different training opportunities under the LTAP. Is that being recommended to be removed because there's just no participation? Is it, or is that am I thinking of something different?
That's a good question. Hannah, can you pull it up so we can look?
Yeah, sorry. Let me just do one quick thing. I was going to try and get out that list. So let me.
Usually there's an annual contribution in the tip.
Okay, so 367.98.
Not a current program.
Transfer program.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if that's the same one that's in the tip every year that provides certain portion of SDBG funding for the region to make that training available to all the jurisdictions. I was just curious about that.
We will check with Carolyn and see if that's the one she's putting in the tip. That's the one she's referencing.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, yeah, it covers like training, like flagging and construction administration and heavy equipment, things like that. So
yeah, perfect. Yeah, we'll check with her and see if that's the one they're referencing.
Okay.
If it is, we'll leave it, obviously. It looks like Natalie.
Would you be able to keep the list up there, Hannah?
Yeah, so I'm going to send it out right now. Actually, so sorry, just give me 1 second here.
So I have a few other things, and this does, these particular projects align with the work I do. So I apologize if I'm dominating the conversation here, but the environmental mitigation, what you had proposed there was related to wildlife crossings. Is environmental mitigation only relevant to wildlife crossings, or is it other topics as well?
That is one that we're looking to broaden and make it more, that's going to be a merging of other line items. I think when Hannah pulls the spreadsheet up, we can see, but that was one that the intent was to make a more broader category.
So if you take this out, it will go away and then it will just be wildlife linkages as I read this. Is that incorrect?
So we're proposing to include linkages and environmental mitigation strategies.
That's what we're proposing to rename the project.
Yeah, and if you can see that the highlighted,
so it would stay in there. It would just be renamed.
Yeah, it would be broadened so that it's not just wildlife linkages, but it's environmental.
Okay.
Yeah.
Zoom in a little bit. Yeah, this is a consolidation effort.
Okay. And then the other one had to do with the modeling. If you want to scroll down, this regard 29903, and maybe Dustin could speak to this. This looks like it's related to ozone conformity, which doesn't happen at the present moment because we're in attainment for ozone, so there is no conformity determination that needs to happen right now. I think that the expectation that we will stay in attainment would be the appropriate way to say it, not conformity, for that standard is incorrect. I think that in all likelihood, we will go non-attainment in the future for ozone, because the standard is likely going to be lowered. And if it's lowered, you definitely will be in non-attainment. So I think keeping that in there and planning for ozone non-attainment makes sense, not removing it. I don't know. Justin, did you have anything more to add to that?
Yeah, no, Lee, I think this had been in since around 2000 in anticipation of going into ozone non-attainment. So I think it's been, yeah, pushed forward for future SIP planning and implementation for the last 25 years. But yeah, the point if it drops down from 0.070 could be taken into consideration.
Okay, so do you think it would be best to also keep it in there?
Yeah, as to perhaps not reinsert it when the time came.
Yeah, I
So-
think it makes more sense to just leave it there rather than have it go through another process to get it back in there. So I definitely think if that's going to happen, it's going to happen in this time frame. So it makes sense to keep it in there to plan for that. And then I guess I'm just curious about some of these other things as far as like commuter incentives for alternative transportation. Is that something that was discussed in the past, that incentives would be provided? I don't know why that would have been in there in the first place, but I'm just curious if anybody has any history on that particular project.
I do
Yeah, and
not.
that was from 2003, so 355.03. Can look it up really quick. I know it's not something. Yes, this is the description that we have currently in the Explorer. So provide cash incentives to change the behavior of driverless commuters. People who switch their mode of travel are paid up to $50 a month for up to 6 months. So again, this was originally added in 2003. I don't believe, yeah, the cash incentives are not currently something that that PAG offers.
Okay, yeah, never heard of that before. Would you be able to go back to the list?
Yes. No, wrong list. There we go.
And then I guess some of these other things, are these things that, they just seem like they're things that maybe we should be talking about more of, that I'm not really hearing conversations around any of this stuff, such as, traveler information systems and things along those lines. That kind of falls into the category of travel demand management systems, which I support and think we should be doing more of that. So I guess I'm just curious, is that something, are travel demand management type programs something that PAG is no longer interested in pursuing and trying to incorporate within our regional planning efforts?
It's not something that's currently in our OWP. I don't know, Hunsu, if you guys had anything along those lines in your pipeline. I think some of this is we're putting in for the sake of consolidation. Some of it's in there because it's old legacy stuff. And then, we're also trying to make room for all the new projects and programs that the jurisdictions have proposed to us. So that's where some of these recommendations are coming from, but I don't know, Hunsu, if you had anything.
I have no idea this because this might be relevant to any operation site, and maybe just Rick Ellis, and maybe you can just check with him. And because of the traveler information system is like just providing just additional information to the operation site and to the any and the commuters and or any further and the users and the passengers for the public transportation. So which might be more likely relevant to in the RIC.
Yeah, and I don't know, Hannah, did you talk?
I might be able to answer that one. I spoke to our CFO to see if any withdrawals were made against this ledger, if you would. And he gave me the same explanation, is that TransView, that's probably the interface that you're thinking of. TransView is still going to be around. It's actually kind of built into our overhead and operational. It's no longer funded from a specific line item. So this one has become more of a legacy line item. Does that answer your question? Clarify, I should say. So the data and the services provided by this program that was originally identified. If you see that the RMAP ID number 98, this one was created in 1998. It now lives in PAG's everyday function. It's just part of our general service offering to the community. It's the data that we collect and broadcast on TransView is what this program initiated.
Quick clarification. The TransView program used to be homed through the city of Tucson. So that's where this ID came from, because we were transferring money to the city of Tucson to support staff as well as server and computer information system. But Dave, you are correct. Everything's been moved into PAG. So there's no longer anything taking place at the jurisdictions on that ID.
So why is it being proposed to be removed?
My interpretation would be that it's no longer necessary. So it's because it's obsolete. We wouldn't need to have that 5 million count against we have to be fiscally constrained, and so there's no need to have this item count against it, since it's already incorporated within our practices. It's not a funding. There's no funding being offered brought to the table for it, so we shouldn't have it listed.
And then Paul, looks like you have your hand up.
Yeah, so sorry, I have been pulled away for other things and haven't really heard the entirety of the conversation, but what I am hearing is a little bit concerning. TransView is an explicit TIP project, and it is pulling from the region's STP or STBG funding. So it is by essence utilizing federal funds and should be having a parent project in the RMAP in order to do so. If you're talking about getting rid of it, then I think that's a larger conversation that needs to be had. But to just describe it as it's part of the OWP kind of flies in the face of utilizing the region's limited amount of STBG funds for this purpose, that the region said, that's a good purpose. We think we should invest in that. Let's make a TIP explicit project for that. And let's have City of Tucson run it. And then when that ran its course, let's keep it going. Let's have PAG run it. It remained an explicit TIP project. And I think removing it from the RMAP runs the risk of having it not be eligible for funding at all.
Good point, Paul. We'll look into it and get a determination. But yeah, the intent here is not to get rid of TransView. I can promise you that. So yeah, we'll get a determination on that one for you. But thanks for bringing that up.
Yeah, and so I think, the large set of the recommendations need to be a little bit more closely reviewed. What Natalie and others have said about safe routes to school is concerning. If there's not a parent project in the RMAP, you are by default saying that that is not a supported program and is thereby not eligible for any regional funding or federal funding. And so I think we need to be really careful to not throw the baby out with the bathwater here for things that we know may be dormant, but may still be funded through City of Tucson General Fund or other programs, and continue to seek opportunity for regional funding at the table. If those things are not in the RMAP, they are not eligible to do so. And so I think we need to be very thoughtful on what we're eliminating.
Yeah, fair point, Paul. And I would just encourage everyone then when we send this out to look for opportunities where there could be overlap. You know, I think Safe Routes to School is a case in point, is that if it could be reflected under other line items in the RMAP, then let's make sure we're not double counting. We had some of that, like when we were looking at actual projects where we could tell that, okay, we have some overlap here. Let's make sure we're not double counting, if you will. So, you know, if those totals for other categories are off, then let's take a look at those, because we got to just make sure we're not spreading ourselves out too thin and not providing opportunities for the next evolution of plans and programs and projects for that matter. All right. So like I said, we're going to send this out. I think Hannah just did, along with the complete project list, which I believe we just sent out as well. We heard Jason had a couple updates on his projects. And then if you guys take a look at your own, I think we worked through most of it with each partner, but if there are changes that you guys want to see or that are not reflected, please bring those to our attention as soon as possible, because we would like to have the complete ask, if you will, like what we're looking at it before we fiscally constrain this list, but have the whole list sort of pulled together by the February TPC. With that being said, we are going to send out a doodle for the next meeting of this group. We may try to do one before February TPC. That might be kind of a squish with some other things that we have going on here at our agency, as well as your guys' availability, but keep an eye out for a doodle poll. Another thought that we had was to try to have this meeting directly to follow TPC, if that helps work with everybody's availability. So do keep an eye out for that. Hannah, did you have anything else to cover with the group, or?
Yeah, not too much else. Again, yeah, take a look at that full project list. You can also go into the RMAP Explorer. Within the RMAP Explorer, just make sure just verify the priority and the time frame of all the projects as well. But I think that covers it. Then Jeanette, before we conclude, I can go over the in-kind really quick.
Oh yes,
so I can wait.
Yeah, sorry, we skipped over our usual spiel on the in-kind reporting at the beginning of the meeting. So if you guys are paid with federal dollars, let us know. If not, of course, we will make an estimation on the time spent for this meeting. So just our usual in-kind spiel. So thank you guys so much. Did anybody have any other questions before we sign off? All right. Thank you guys so much for attending and swiftly moving towards a virtual meeting. And we will see you guys soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Wow.